Hello everyone and welcome back to the Viktory Forge. Today's video is a special one, my 50th upload, and to celebrate I'm going to throw it back to my very first video, but instead of making a diorama, I've been seeing a lot of these awesome 3D Pokemon card videos and wanted to get in on the action. So for this milestone project, I'm going to take the amazing art in these cards and expand it into one epic evolution landscape. After coming up with a plan that I would soon completely abandon in favor of even more layers to enhance the look and depth of the cards, I printed them off using as high a resolution image as possible and began the careful and meticulous cutting process. I started the cutting process by cutting out the outer edges of each card, my trusty ruler in hand and channeling my inner perfectionist, because nothing's going to ruin a 3D build faster than a crooked Charmander. Once the edges were clean and straight and the corners rounded, I moved on to slicing the inside layers with my handy X-Acto knife. Pro tip, watch your fingers as they're not part of the evolutionary line. With all the layers cut, I stacked and glued them together like a Pokémon sandwich, one slice of flame at a time, making sure everything lined up just right, and then actually ended up being rather thick when I had all of the layers glued together. After the glue had dried, it was time for the final detail work. I used the leftover parts from the original cards to construct all of the little symbols, the numbers, the words, and different design elements, basically performing tiny cardboard surgery with some questionable medical credentials. With the cards getting close to done, it was time to shift gears and tackle the painting. I scaled my referencing cards to fit inside a 14 by 22 inch frame, because what's an epic project without a little math and measuring, right? When it came time to paint, I started working from the front to the back in order to build in some of the depth as I went. The first step was to block in where all of the grass, the shrubs, and closest boulders were sitting, and then I could build up the shadows and highlights on each of these sections, going back and forth making sure my cards were still going to fit in the right spot and everything blended seamlessly together. Next, I moved up the sides of the painting with the canyon walls and finally blocked in the sky to close off the top of the painting. The middle area between the cliffs and the horizon actually turned out to be the most difficult part of this whole painting. I second-guessed the colors quite a few times, but eventually I landed on something that felt at least not as wrong as it had when it was yellow. After getting all of these shapes blocked in approximately the color I wanted them to be, it was then simply a matter of going back and forth and adding more and more layers and details, especially concentrating on the shadows and highlights to really push the levels and depth as much as I could in this painting. The lava and the clouds were another area where I was constantly questioning myself. I must have went back over these areas at least a dozen times and ended up drastically scaling back the amount of lava I had in the attempt to make it look like it was actually flowing. With the painting finally at a point where I could step back and say, yeah, that looks pretty good, I signed it, which is always a satisfying moment, and then I gave the lava flows a coat of gloss varnish to crank up the heat and make it look a little extra molten, because if it's not shiny, is it even lava? And finally, I sealed the whole painting with a matte varnish to protect it and give it that finished, professional look that won't smudge when I touch it. Once the matte finish was dry, I trimmed the edges to fit the frame perfectly and moved on to prepping the backing, leading up to what was easily the most heart-pounding part of the whole project, cutting out and mounting the cards. Here's the moment of truth. One slip of the blade and months of work would become garbage real fast. The first hurdle was to cut the backing without making the holes too big, and then I held my breath the entire time while cutting the actual painting, and finally I mounted the cards without crushing them. And with the cards securely in place, now we can move on to the big reveal. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I enjoyed making it. It was a long and meticulous journey, but I'm generally proud of how it turned out. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment and let me know your favorite part, or even check out some of my other builds and creations. That's 50 projects complete and more to come. We'll see you next time here at the Viktory Forge.